Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told Out of Voice Radio. So today, we are celebrating the release of Burning Shadows. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the latest expansion of the Pokémon trading card game comes out today, and we are celebrating by looking at the top 10 cards in that set. But of course, let's start like always by explaining why a few cards didn't make the list. Super Scoop Up is one of those cards that just gets reprinted over and over again. It's getting reprinted in Burning Shadows. It's just another print of an often printed card. I don't think we can justify popping it on the top 10, although it is going to see an awful lot of play. Noivern GX has potential to be really good. It's got one attack for 2 energy that blocks item cards, not unlike Seismitoad, and an attack for 3 energy which blocks special energy, not unlike Giratina, but with double dragon energy rotating pretty much as soon as this set comes out, I don't think I can justify putting Noivern on the list. Similarly, Charizard GX has got an amazing GX attack that discards the top 10 cards of your opponent's deck, but the other attacks aren't quite good enough to warrant putting it on the list. I am personally a big fan of the Beware that for just a double colourless energy allows you to flip a coin and if heads discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, but it's not really all that competitive. Similarly, Diancie is amazing. It allows you to search your deck for a Pokemon and evolve one of your bench, but it's for a fairy energy, so although it's going to be great in decks like Gardevoir, I don't think it really has the widespread appeal to make it great in every deck. And Ho-Oh GX, I am not as much of a fan as most people. I know the GX attack allows you to grab 3 EXs or GXs onto the bench, but it's only really evolved GXs that you can grab using this, which really means you've got Charizard and Incineroar, neither of which have set the Pokemon world on fire. Get it? The other thing is, of course, that if you use Ho-Oh's GX attack to get them out, you lose their GX attacks because it's one of any description per game. I'm also quite a big fan of this Lycanroc that does 30 damage for 1 energy, 60 if they're a basic, 80 if you use a strong energy, 110 if you pop a choice band on there. Problem is, although you're hitting really good stuff for weakness like Drampa and Darkrai, really, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to have a counter against fighting weak decks, we're getting Marshadow in this set, so I don't know how much I can really love Lycanroc. So they're the cards that didn't quite make it. Let's start at number 10 of the cards that did with TAPU FINI GX. Now, like all of the rest of the Tapus, TAPU FINI has no weakness. The retreat cost of 1 is nice. For 1 colourless energy, you do 20 damage and switch to the bench. But this is a colourless energy, so it can be put in any deck whatsoever. Most decks are playing Choice Band, so against a water-weak deck like, I don't know, Turtonator, you can be hitting 100 damage for 1 energy with TAPU FINI while going to the bench. That's really good, because it means you're 2-hit KOing. That's nice. And if you don't have a water attacker, this one's a decent one to tech in just as long as you're playing Choice Band, which most decks will be. For 2 water and a colourless, you get to snipe for 120 while discarding 2 water energy. It's not as great as it would have been because Shaman's rotating out, and this would 1-hit KO a Shaman, but again, it's quite nice just to hit the bench if you need to try and KO something. Maybe KO something like a Gardevoir to turn back your abilities. For 1 water energy, the GX attack shuffles your opponent's active Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their deck as long as they've got a bench. You can't use this to win the game. But if your opponent's got 1 Pokemon that's looking really good and nothing else, this is really quite nice indeed. You can't win the game with this GX attack, but you can slow your opponent down. And that's what TAPU FINI is. It's a good tech for water decks. You can use Aqua Patch for the second attack. The first attack is a nice hit and run attack, and that can actually be teched into anything. And the GX attack is a lot of fun. If you're playing a water deck, or even something with rainbow energy, consider Tapu Lele. It's a very nice tech. Speaking of nice techs, in at number 9 we've got NECROZMA, another Pokemon that I think really here is not a deck on its own. It is a tech to be put into other decks. Really here we're looking at the GX attack. 100 damage to all of your opponent's GX and EX Pokemon for 3 energy. Now, it does have immunity to colourless Pokemon, and with Hex Maniac and Silent Lab rotating, this is a lot more powerful. Means your opponent's got to be playing something like Gardevoir or Alolan Muck. But that really is about it, ladies and gentlemen. It's a GX attack we love here. 100 damage is great. And Ninja Boy is what I'm thinking. Maybe you use something like the promo Tapu Koko, spread a bit of damage, Ninja Boy into Necrozma, add a third energy, off you go. Ninja Boy and dropping this as a surprise could be devastating and win you the game, and I think that's good enough to pop him in at number 9. In at number 8, we've got Alolan Ninetales. Not the GX, although the GX is amazing. Nope. I am talking about the non-GX. It's got a really nice ability which blocks attacks from EXs and GXs, all effects of attacks, and I still love that Pokemon are printing this as EX and GX. It makes our lives a lot nicer. And again, with Hex Maniac rotating out, this is a much more useful ability than it otherwise might have been. And now you can be doing the big attacks and the big KOs with Alolan Ninetales, and we've already seen that sees a lot of play. And then you can bring in this against a largely GX or EX heavy deck, and maybe they don't have a non-GX which can get a KO on Alolan Ninetales. Good players will be able to play around this if they've got the cards in their deck, but it's still a really good card and deserves a spot at number 8. In at number 7, Golisopod GX. I love Golisopod GX, ladies and gentlemen. Personally, it's one of my favourite cards in the entire set, but we're trying to be unbiased here. Really, it's the first attack we are loving, first impression, 120 damage for 1 energy if Golisopod was on the bench and became active this turn. Now, a very important ruling question here. The translation we had in Japan basically said if it became active this turn, but the current translation we have, the official translation on the English card, is if Golisopod was on the bench and became active. That means if you evolve an active Wimpod, it will not do 120. You've got to bring it in the active. Even so, this is great. At the moment, you've got Forest of Giant Plants to evolve up straight away, but even when this rotates, you're going to have Wally and Tapu Lele to search out the Wally. And it's just powerful. You can use the promo Lurantis to do a bit of extra damage. You can use Choice Band. Before the rotation, you can use the Eevees so that Vaporeon hits weakness against Volcanion and Turtonator, and Flareon hits weakness against things like Metagross and Decidueye. I think before rotation with Eevees and Forest of Giant Plants, it's better. But even after rotation, 120 for 1 energy, potentially on the first turn of the game. And as a fun side note, we've got a nice Wimpod coming out that on the first turn of the game has free retreat, which means you evolve the one on the bench and then bring it into the active. Really quite nice, ladies and gentlemen. Good enough, as far as I'm concerned, to come in at number 7. In at number 6, another tech Pokemon, but a really good one. Marshadow GX. Marshadow GX allows you to use the attacks of any basic Pokemon in your discard pile. It essentially gives every deck a decent fighting type attacker. It means that Darkrai and Drampa and Zoroark and everything else can easily be taken down. And because you're copying the attacks of Pokemon in your discard, you can play whatever energy you're playing anyway. It's so good. It's such a good tech. It comes in at number 6. And as far as I'm concerned, this is where the big gap comes in. I think the top 5 are much better than 10 to 6. In at number 5, KIAWE, an amazing supporter that opens up way too many new strategies to talk about. Turtonator, I think, becomes great with KIAWE. I did a video about that, link in the description. You search your deck for 4 fire energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. Yes, it ends your turn, but if you're going first, you can't attack turn 1 anyway. So what's the problem? The new Regigigas coming out could be amazing with this because it does 160 but for 5 energy. Oh no, wait. KIAWE's coming in. Turtonator gets better. Volcanion gets better. This, for any fire or colourless decks, just adds early game speed, which is so difficult to replicate. In at number 4, Darkrai GX. Now, we already know that the Breakpoint Darkrai is great, doing an extra 20 damage for every dark energy on the field, but now we're getting Darkrai GX. The ability here is amazing. You just get to put it on your bench from the discard pile and attach a darkness from your discard pile, and that just leads to speed. You can get more dark energy out really fast for your Breakpoint Darkrai. You could use Energy Switch to power up something like your Breakpoint Darkrai. And as if that wasn't good enough, we've got an amazing GX attack, which gives you an instant one-hit KO for free energy if your opponent's active is affected by a special condition. Now, maybe in Standard this isn't going to be that great, because a special condition might be awkward, but in Expanded, get ready for Speed Darkrai because of Hypnotoxic Laser. Not only do you now have a super speedy deck that hits really hard with Darkrai EX and Darkrai GX, but now, just using a Hypnotoxic Laser and free energy, you get an instant KO on anything. 250 HP Metagross, one-hit KO. 240 HP Decidueye with a great ability and free energy, one-hit KO. You see where I'm going with this. It is ridiculous. But I think there's now another little gap before the top 3. The top 3 are crazy good. And in at number 3, we've got ACEROLA. I think I've been pronouncing that wrong, or so I've been told. This card is amazing. It's like the old AZ, but you don't have to discard any cards attached to your Pokemon, but they've got to be damaged. If one of your Pokemon is damaged, you just get to pick it up with ACEROLA. That's crazy. And there's way too many uses for this, but I'll give you a few. Clear some bench space, so you can play something like a Tapu Lele the following turn, or even just bench another attacker. Pick up a Pokemon that's about to get KO'd, so you don't give up prizes. Pick up a Pokemon that could be dragged into the active with GUZMA so your opponent can stall for a turn or two. Pick a Pokemon out of the active so you can promote an attacker that you want to do a whole bunch of damage. Pick up a paralyzed or asleep Pokemon so you can put up a Pokemon that can attack. Again, I could keep going, but I'm hoping you get the idea here. There are way too many options for ACEROLA, but there are just a few. In at number 2, GUZMA. GUZMA, ladies and gentlemen, is amazing. It's Lysander, but it's also a switch. Now, sometimes this won't be as good because you won't want to switch, but as long as you've got a free retreat Pokemon on your bench or a Pokemon with Floatstone on your bench, it's not going to make a difference. What I love about GUZMA is sometimes you really want to drag a Pokemon in the active, but you don't want to put up your main attacker unless you can drag your opponent's Pokemon in the active. Otherwise, you'll get KO'd. So what you do here is put a random Pokemon in the active. If you draw a GUZMA, you drag their Pokemon in the active and switch to yours. If you don't draw the GUZMA, that's okay. You do neither. Life is good. GUZMA's amazing. Lysander has transformed the format since it was first released, and GUZMA is just as good and arguably in some situations even better. But it's not the best card in the set. The best card in the set is Gardevoir GX. Gardevoir GX, ladies and gentlemen, is one of those Pokemon where you look at it and you basically say, everything about this card is good. Now, to be fair, the HP is low for a Stage 2 Pokemon, and the retreat cost of 2 kind of sucks, but that's where the bad news ends. The weakness to metal means you're only weak to Metagross. That's about the only good deck playing metal at the moment. The ability allows you to attach an extra fairy energy from your hand to any of your Pokemon. The GX attack allows you to put 10 cards from your discard pile into your deck, which means that you can put consistency cards in there, so in the late game, an N is less likely to annoy you. You can put all of your GUZMA back in your deck, so it's more likely you're going to draw into it in the late game. Against something like Gardevoir, you can put all your items back into your deck, so your opponent can't do much damage with Gardevoir. It's just way too many uses for this. And then you've got the attack. 30 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. Now, we've seen this attack be really good for stuff like Mega Mewtwo and for Yveltal. But this is even better because it's any energy and you've got the ability. So using the ability, you can attach a fairy energy, then for your attachment for the turn, you can attach a double colourless, and now you're hitting 90 damage. If your opponent's active has no energy on them. And that's just what you can get in one turn. The next turn, you can attach more energy. Great ability, great attack, great GX attack, great weakness. And with the new Diancie, you can even add a bit of speed into the evolution. Not to mention the fact that Gardevoir evolves from Kelia, as does Gallade, so now you get Gallade as well, which has always been a good Pokemon. There are so many great things about Gardevoir. I feel very confident putting Gardevoir as the best card in the set. And it's not the first time we've said that about Gardevoir. They've had some very good Gardevoirs in the past. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, all these top 10 videos, they're here for argument. And I want some argument, good-natured of course, be nice, the cardinal rule. Chuck your top 10 list in the comments. Remember my rule, if you are going to argue that one card should be higher, you need to tell me what you would lower to make room. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy and Twitch at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. That's where you get some live action. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods and so on, go and check out patreon.com/PTCGRadio. By far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.